Funding for Election 2014 coverage is provided in part by AARP, a nonprofit, nonpartisan association, 86,000 strong in North Dakota. AARP fights on real issues that matter to you and your family. And by the members of Prairie Public.
Welcome to Prairie Public's continuing coverage of Election 2014. I'm Matt O'Lean. This is the debate for one of the seats on the North Dakota Public Service Commission. Our guests today are Public Service Commissioner Julie Fedorchak and Public Service Commission candidate Tyler Axness. Based on a coin flip, Julie Fedorchak will go first on the opening statement and last on the closing statement. There'll be debate in between, so 1 minute opening statement. Julie Fedorchak.
Good evening. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Prairie Public and AARP for hosting this debate. North Dakota is in the strongest economic position in the history of our state. In the last 10 years, we've gone from exporting our best and our brightest to keeping them here and putting them to work in North Dakota. We have the fastest growing economy, the fastest growing personal income growth, and the lowest unemployment rates in the nation. In today's North Dakota, the greatest challenge is balance. Balancing the needs of the energy and agriculture system that is driving this growth with our very strong interest to protect the North Dakota quality of life we all enjoy. That has been my focus in my last 20 months on the Public Service Commission, and that will remain my focus if I'm elected by voters in November. Thank you.
Okay, Tyler Axness, 1 minute opening statement.
Well, thank you to Matt O'Lean, Prairie Public, AARP, and of course Commissioner Fedorchak for allowing us to have this discussion about the importance of the Public Service Commission during this very important moment in our state's history. North Dakota has been granted the opportunity to both simultaneously feed and power people around the globe. It's an opportunity that no one else in this country has at the moment, and it's an opportunity that we need to make sure that we get right. It's one thing that we have got to make sure that we are both balancing, as Commissioner Fedorchak said, the needs of our agricultural industry and our energy industry. And to do that, we need leadership in Bismarck. Unfortunately, over the past few years, we have seen routine pipeline leaks. We have seen a backlog and unsafe rail traffic going through our communities, unreliable and frequent power outages. It's things that can be prevented with leadership, and that's why I'm running for the Public Service Commission, to make sure that we do have a robust economy going forward.
Thank you, Tyler. Okay, let's get into some issues. First issue, and Tyler, you will start off on this issue first. Sure. Let's start with the oil boom in the oil industry, which of course is a huge issue. The PSC is considering and wants to regulate pipelines and transportation by rail. Are the feds letting the commission do this? What is your position on this issue? And does there need to be more regulation of the oil industry within the state? Tyler, you start first.
Well, I do believe that as a state, we need to take more ownership of the development within our borders. I do believe that we need to have a greater voice from the Public Service Commission. I have proposed a comprehensive pipeline oversight plan that consolidates and streamlines the oversight of our pipelines in North Dakota. Right now, there's about 5 different state agencies that have ownership and oversight of pipelines. It's created confusion for both the industry and for our landowners and our ag and ranch folks all across the state, and it's resulted in spills. It's resulted in the current commissioners not knowing where all pipelines are in the state. So I think that we first have to get a handle of our pipeline oversight locally here to increase capacity, and then that's going to reduce the need for rail traffic that's going to haul these crude tankers out of the state. I do believe that as part of the existing jurisdiction of the PSC, that we should have a better voice and a stronger voice when it comes to the rail issues as well. Currently, we have a huge backlog problem that needs to be resolved, and it's going to take people at all levels, from the state all the way up to the federal government, to make sure that people that, regardless of what commodity they're shipping, are able to use the existing rail service in North Dakota.
Okay, Julie, response?
Sure. Oversight of both the rail and the pipeline industries in North Dakota is a shared partnership, and there's 3 main entities involved. PHMSA, the federal agency that oversees the safety of the pipelines, the state North Dakota PSC, and the Industrial Commission. those are shared responsibilities going back many decades. This is a system that was developed to have an orderly way to manage all of this infrastructure. So I think currently the system is working quite well. The PSC has a role to play in the siting and the safety inspections of the gas lines and the siting of the crude oil and the gas lines in North Dakota. We are seeking the jurisdiction from the feds to partner on the oversight of the crude oil safety in state, and that's a program that I support and we have included in our budget, so that would increase our role in that side of things. So I think the partnership has worked well. I think the feds have not done as much to adapt in some of these areas as they could and probably should. That's why we're seeking this oversight for in-state crude oil lines, and so I think moving forward we can do it better, and we can have a stronger role at the Public Service Commission in both the rail side as well. I've proposed a state rail safety program that would add to the federal safety program that already exists. We would supplement their efforts and really put more boots on the ground and more folks looking at the safety of our system. And making sure that we're operating as safely as we possibly can.
Okay, Tyler, I'll give you another response.
Well, yeah, I don't believe that the current system for pipeline oversight is working. Since May of this year, we've had over 12 pipeline accidents and leaks, both from saltwater lines to oil leaks. And the bottom line is, if we consolidate and streamline this process of oversight of pipelines, I think that we can prevent and minimize some of those leaks. Now, I know the current chairman had dubbed the jurisdiction of pipelines in North Dakota as a quagmire because it is so cumbersome and confusing. I think if we simplify, we streamline, that the PSC is a single point of contact for all that is pipelines, regardless from saltwater to crude to natural gas to coal, all of the above, that this is going to make this development much more understandable for both the industry, for the state of North Dakota, and for the people that call this place home. And as for the rail inspection program, I do support the adoption of a state-run rail inspection program. I question why it has taken so long for the PSC to come up with this proposal. We've had derailments consistent. In Castleton, there was a train exploding last December. That's not the first derailment in that area. There have been many more in that specific area. Earlier in this decade, we had a train derail in Minot, and there was no proposal at that time for the PSC to actually take a step up and say, you know what, let's see what we can do as a commission to provide public safety within our borders.
Okay, final word on this, Julie, and then we'll move on to another issue.
Sure. I'll start with the final component on the rail safety. I think now is the right time to start the rail safety program. If you look back a number of years, the volumes just hadn't changed as much as they have in the last couple of years with crude by rail, and the feds just haven't adapted to this new system. The feds have primary responsibility for rail safety, and so now is the appropriate time once we see that they haven't really increased their staffing level in state as much as they should have. In terms of the pipeline program in the current jurisdiction, what Tyler is proposing sounds good, and it sounds like kind of a sensible talking point. But when it comes to strong policy, I just don't think he fully appreciates the system that is currently in place, how many years it's adapted, and the fact that the Industrial Commission's jurisdiction over some of these pipelines exists because those pipelines are triggered with the oil permitting process. The Industrial Commission is responsible for the oil permitting, and so it makes sense to tie that, the pipeline permitting for those pipelines, to that drilling permit. So I think, you know, it's a sensible system. We're all working together. I think that's the most important thing. And rather than, you know, throwing that all away at this point, at this critical juncture when there's so much going on, and starting from scratch by having the PSC taking over management, all of that. I just don't think that that's the right approach.
Okay, let's move on to our next issue. What are your views on alternative forms of energy like natural gas, wind, and solar? And what is your view of the coal industry? Julie Fedorchak, you go first this time.
I am a strong proponent of an all-of-the-above energy strategy, and North Dakota is a model for that strategy in our country. We have great coal resources, and I am a firm believer in coal, and it is the most reliable and affordable long-term energy supply for electric generation. Wind energy is also valuable, and we have a great wind resource in North Dakota that really has exploded in the last few years in terms of development. Since I've been on the commission, we've sited 4 new wind farms just in the last 18 months. So wind is a really strong mix. It's a clean, entirely clean and renewable, so it's a nice balance for coal. Coal is always reliable, wind is not always blowing. So I think that those two balance each other really well. We also have a very strong gas resource in North Dakota, and that resource is providing more opportunity to add some gas-fired generation in our state and throughout the country. And that's been a real valuable new development in America, and is going to, a long-term, provide an opportunity for additional diverse portfolio of energy. You look at a really tough winter like last winter, we needed, in this country and in North Dakota, we needed all of our energy resources to produce enough electricity to keep the lights on and keep the heat on during those tough winter months. So I'm a real proponent of the all-of-above strategy, and have been working very hard in the last few months to encourage the EPA to support that same type of approach.
Okay, Tyler, response?
Yeah, you know, along the lines with the commissioner here, I too firmly believe in all the above. We have abundant resources here in North Dakota that can supply energy not only to our state, but across the upper Midwest and across this nation. Let's utilize all of those resources to the best of our ability. The one problem that I've had from this administration is the allowance of the flaring of our natural gas resources. Let's capture it, let's utilize it. So communities like Rugby, North Dakota, that don't have a supply of natural gas right now, can use that resource rather than setting it on fire out west. Our coal industry needs to continue to stay strong. They're providing great jobs, reliable energy at an affordable rate. Let's continue to support that industry amongst our wind, our natural gas, and all other forms of energy in North Dakota, so that we continue to lead the nation in affordable rates when it comes to energy in the state.
Okay, Julie, another response?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad that Tyler mentioned Rugby. That's actually a community. I agree with him. We should be using this gas resource to hook up more communities in our state to gas power for their homes and their businesses. And I'm working with a task force of folks, some legislators, some industry people, to help get the gas resource out into the communities with the new big distribution lines or transmission lines that are being considered throughout North Dakota. That provides an opportunity to bring gas to a lot more communities that didn't have it before and haven't had it. And so I really agree that this gas resource is a huge new opportunity to spread the growth that's occurring in the Bakken throughout the state, bring it to communities like Rugby and Hillsboro, and even I have a meeting next week with Wishick, who's looking at trying to gasify their community. It provides a real great resource for economic development projects and really strong opportunities for those communities moving forward.
Okay, Tyler, final word, and then we'll move on to the next issue.
Sure. You know, the only thing that I'll really add to this topic is we need to make sure that we're planning for the future. I think at the beginning of this development that may have been lacking. The governor and the Industrial Commission permitted all those wells, but I don't think anybody, whether it be on the Public Service Commission or the Industrial Commission, asked how are we going to take everything that comes out of that well and get it to market to where North Dakotans can reliably use that resource. So we need to continue and adapt to the times, and let's plan forward so the next generations have a real opportunity.
Okay, next issue, let's move on. What are your views on carbon reduction, new standards for coal plants and emissions, and what is the EPA's role in this? Tyler, you start first this time.
Sure. The proposal from the EPA is troubling at times. We're asking an industry to adapt to technology that does not yet exist, and it's potentially going to threaten the industry in North Dakota that's provided reliable energy for decades. And it's also threatening thousands of jobs, good paying jobs here in North Dakota. I'm encouraged that the comment period has been extended, and I encourage people watching to submit comments about your concerns to the EPA so that they hear that we know what we're doing here in North Dakota. We have a model. We don't need a one-size-fits-all from Washington. So let's go ahead and continue to maintain our strong coal industry. Could you repeat the first part of the question there?
Carbon reduction, your views
Sure,
on carbon reduction and new standards for coal plants and emissions. Yeah, probably the carbon.
Yeah, thanks, Matt.
Yep.
You know, I think everybody wants to utilize these resources and also have a very small environmental footprint. And I think the industry itself is working on that. And given time, they will continue to reduce their carbon footprint. I think we need to partner with them to reasonably get to a point in a reasonable time frame. Setting unrealistic goals in an unreasonable time frame isn't how we're going to get it done. So I want to work with the industry to reduce those emissions, but yet maintain that reliable energy.
Okay, Julie, response?
Absolutely. I too agree that we need to be concerned about this long-term and the environmental impact. However, these proposed rules are really difficult for the energy companies to even understand and really fully try to plan for, because they're so confusing. So we've spent a lot of time working with all the utilities that we regulate to try to make sense of these rules and to have good informed feedback to the EPA on what could make them better or workable or manageable. So the clarity is really missing in these rules. But from a bigger perspective, both reliability and cost are a huge concern when it comes to the impact of these rules on consumers and on businesses. And so the EPA needs to make good on its pledge. I had a meeting with Gina McCarthy, the head of the EPA, when she was here, and she promised that these rules were not going to jeopardize reliability or affordability. That's got to be a standard. We have to have reliable power for our country, for our economy, for our way of life. And so we can't be changing the rules and making them unrealistic or overly burdensome. At the same time, I'd like to just suggest that what's happening already would be a far better approach than the EPA coming down with these very strict rules. The emissions rates of the energy companies that we regulate, the PSC, have dropped 12 to 15% in terms of the amount of carbon dioxide that they have emitted in the recent years, going back to 2005. And that's happened through the more natural market-driven development and implementation of wind and other renewable resources. So I think there are better ways to do this that would work more naturally with the market forces and have less of a potential impact on the costs and affordability of our electric utility supplies.
Okay, I'm going to try to get two more issues in. Let's move on. This question is from our co-sponsor, AARP. A few years ago, the legislature passed a law allowing for profit utilities to charge customers for investments made in power plants, even if those plants are never built. MDU and Otter Tail charged North Dakota customers more than $13 million for the failed Big Stone 2 power plant. Is this law fair to consumers, and would you use your leadership position on the PSC to propose changes or elimination of the law? Julie Fedorchak, you go first this time.
The term that they're talking about is this advanced determination of prudence, a really complicated or technical term that basically allows these companies to come to the PSC, and we can basically endorse their project and say, yeah, we think this is prudent, and you can recover this in your rates when you build it. I have not had a case where the project has not been developed since I've worked at the commission. But I know about this Big Stone 2 case, and it was really troubling, and it fell apart at the last minute because of a wide variety of issues, and there had already been expenses incurred by the customers, by the company, and eventually the customers. So I see the pros and the cons of this law. I personally don't have enough experience to say I would advocate for eliminating it, but I am very careful in approaching these advanced determination of prudence projects and making sure that we know more about the likelihood of the projects actually moving forward before we'd approve them investing in them and ultimately charging customers for them.
Okay, Tyler, response?
Sure. As the role of the Public Service Commissioner, I think it is absolutely necessary that we make sure that if we are allowing a rate increase on the North Dakota ratepayers, that we are making sure that that money is invested in North Dakota so that their energy is more reliable and affordable. The problem that I've seen over the past year here in Fargo specifically is routine power outages that have been followed up by rate increase after rate increase that's been approved by this commission. I firmly believe that once elected on the PSC, that I will be able to enforce that these rates are being invested in North Dakota. I'm seeing outdated transformers up north that haven't been updated from a power company in decades. And rumor has it from the people that live there that have talked to that company say they have no plan on updating their equipment. Well, why are we approving rate increases on those ratepayers? So as far as having the investments come from the rates, I think there's a balance that we can find there. I don't think we want to put too much of a burden, especially on our senior citizens that are most likely living on fixed incomes. But the upgrade has to be paid for somehow. So we need to find that balance, and I think that's an appropriate role of the commission.
Okay, Julie, response?
Sure. Just specifically about Tyler's comments about the rates and rate increases and where they're invested. It's a little bit naive to suggest that only the rates can be invested in North Dakota because these systems are integrated. And so, for example, Xcel Energy, their system is built in several different states, and they have generation facilities in several different states. So customers in Fargo are actually served by a nuclear plant outside of Minnesota. So customers in Fargo have to pay a share of the improvements in that plant, which is what this most recent rate increase dealt with. And so you can't completely say that all your rates are going to be only spent in North Dakota when you've got a system in multiple states to take care of and invest in. And so that would be my first thing. The rates in Fargo have increased, and Xcel Energy have increased 2.6, an average of 2.6% annually for the past 25 years. So that's a pretty modest increase in rates to maintain a pretty reliable system. And we have held that company responsible. They're under a performance plan in Fargo for reliability. If customers have more than 3 sustained outages in a year, they have to, the company has to give them a $50 rebate. They're reinvesting, they're spending $400,000 a year in replacing cable in this community. They've hired an electrical engineer in Fargo to manage the reliability and improve the reliability of this system. And after the 3 outages this summer, we had the company in for a hearing in the PSC to ask them, what are the causes of these problems? How are you fixing them? And what's the long-term plan here? And so we are constantly looking at the reliability issue in Fargo and throughout the system to make sure that these utilities are appropriately managing their systems, investing in them, and providing good service to customers.
Okay, last word, Tyler, on this one.
Sure. I think as a commissioner, we need to make sure that these companies that are using North Dakota resources, us as elected officials need to make sure that we are putting North Dakota communities first. As far as the reliability, I'm glad that we're asking the company to come back, but it's after the fact of these power outages. I think we need to do more up front so that when we are granting that rate increase, that we are getting some guarantee that we are going to have an upgrade here in North Dakota, since it is North Dakota paying the increased rate.
Okay. Last issue, kind of a piggyback on this one. The previous issue kind of got into this, and that's the power grid. Xcel Energy has had some power issues in recent years. You kind of touched on that. Is 100% electric reliability in this state, especially with our winters, too much to ask for, and what should the goal be within our state? Tyler, you go first.
I think it should be in 2014 that when you flip the switch, the lights come on. I think that should be a basic guarantee that the Public Service Commission upholds. As we touched on earlier today, we have a number of abundant resources that we can use to power our electricity grid. I was just out in Williston last week, and they're concerned that they're having rolling brownouts. We need to make sure that they have where they are located is where a lot of our new energy is coming from. It shouldn't be a struggle for them to have reliable energy. So we need to find ways to utilize our abundant resources so that every community does have reliable heat and reliable electricity throughout the year. I think that is a basic service that the Public Service Commission needs to uphold.
Okay, Julie, last word, about a minute, and then we'll get to closing statements. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Not only is 100% reliability as an acceptable standard, but companies have to prepare and have resources to provide more than 100%. So they have to estimate their total peak, and they have to have the resources to exceed that in case there's a stronger demand than they anticipated. So 100% reliability is not something that's unreasonable. Now, these companies can't predict storms, and they can't predict squirrels on lines, and so there are always extenuating circumstances that can occur, and there are going to be faults on the lines, and we've worked hard with these companies to make sure that they're kind of elastic and they can jump back and bounce back quickly, and are investing in those kinds of technologies and that kind of infrastructure that is very responsive and adapts quickly and returns quickly when there is a power outage. And so, yeah, we need power. We have to have power, and there are standards in this country to ensure that there is enough electric generation to fill the demand every single day.
Okay, we need to get to closing statements. 1 minute closing statement. Tyler Axness.
Sure. Well, I want to thank Prairie Public and ARP, and of course the Commissioner, for agreeing to have this discussion about the very vital role that the PSC has in this unprecedented time in North Dakota. North Dakotans have a choice in November of this year to continue with politicians in Bismarck that continue to govern by emergency and come up with solutions after a disaster has happened, or we can elect leaders for the Public Service Commission that are going to have the vision to prevent the emergency from happening. we need to get this right so that my kids and my grandkids can have the quality of life that I was fortunate to have in North Dakota. But it takes planning and it takes leadership. It's something I promise you, once elected, that I will do all I can to ask what we need to do as a commission to utilize our resources to the best of our ability, safely and responsibly here in North Dakota.
And 1 minute closing statement, Julie Fedorchak.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Prairie Public, Tyler, and AARP for hosting this event. The challenge in North Dakota today in leadership is balance. We have to be able to balance the needs of industry and agriculture with the needs of our private sector landowners and farmers. We have to balance the need for safe transportation, effective transportation, with safety and public safety. And we have to balance the need for good jobs with protecting the environment. That has been my focus on the commission to date. This election is about ideas, but more importantly, it's about who has the experience and the track record to deliver results. My opponent is a great guy and he's serving in the legislature, but he's only got a half a term in the legislature and really no professional experience that relates to the Public Service Commission. On the contrary, I've been working on energy policy and public policy for more than 20 years, dating back to serving as a senior policy advisor for Governor Ed Schaefer. I look forward to working on the commission for the next few years. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Thanks to both of you for being here in this important debate. I really appreciate it. And thank you for watching Prairie Public's continuing coverage of Election 2014. So long.
Funding for Election 2014 coverage is provided in part by AARP, a nonprofit, nonpartisan association, 86,000 strong in North Dakota. AARP fights on real issues that matter to you and your family. And by the members of Prairie Public.